I still remember the way the cold air stung my face that night, the way it made my breath look like smoke rising from a boy trying too hard to look like a man. Spokane winters always had that bite, that reminder that the world didn't care how young you were or how scared you felt. And that night I felt both, young and terrified, though I didn't fully understand why yet. My mom's boyfriend, Rick, was driving us down a dark stretch of highway, his jaw clenched tight, eyes fixed ahead like he was racing against a thought he didn't want to finish. I sat in the passenger seat, staring at the glowing screen of my cracked phone, pretending everything was normal, pretending I didn't notice the way his hands shook faintly on the wheel, pretending I didn't see the messages popping up on his phone earlier, strange names, numbers coded like they belonged to someone who didn't want to be written down. He'd said we were just going to help a friend, that it would be quick, easy. "You'll make some cash tonight," he'd added, like he was offering me a gift instead of dragging me into something I didn't want to admit was dangerous. My mom didn't even know I'd left the house. She'd passed out after her shift at the diner, exhausted the way only someone trying to escape their own life through work could be. I wished I had woken her, told her where I was going. But some part of me didn't want to worry her. Some part of me still believed Rick was rough around the edges but not a bad guy. Someone who yelled, sure. Someone who drank too much, yes. Someone who punched walls when he was angry. But he always swore he'd never hit us. Like that counted for something. We pulled into a gas station that looked like time forgot it existed. Old neon beer signs flickered in the windows. The small diner attached to it still had customers inside, truckers mostly. The hum of the fluorescent lights outside felt louder than the cold wind blowing across the parking lot. Rick killed the engine, leaned back in his seat, and exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for hours. "Listen," he said, his voice low, almost shaky. "I need you to go inside and wait at the counter. Don't order anything, just sit. I'll meet the guys outside and then we'll talk, okay?" "Why do I have to come at all?" I asked. He looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Fear, frustration, regret, all mixed. "Because they need to see you," he said. "It's part of the deal." A knot twisted in my stomach. "What deal?" He didn't answer. He just opened the door and stepped out, leaving the question hanging in the cold. I walked inside, the warm air hitting me with the smell of coffee, fried food, and old vinyl seats. A waitress looked up but didn't smile. I sat at the counter like Rick told me to, hands tucked under my thighs to hide how they trembled. That's when I saw him. A man sitting alone in a booth near the back, tall, broad shoulders, thick beard, leather jacket, tattoos creeping up his neck, the unmistakable Hell's Angels patch on his vest. He was the type of man mothers warned their kids about, dangerous, unpredictable, the person you avoid eye contact with at all costs. He watched people the way someone watches a storm forming on the horizon. Not nervously, not impatiently, just aware, alert, ready. He wasn't looking at me yet, but every time I glanced in his direction, something in me tightened. Not fear exactly, but something like being seen without being looked at. I told myself I was imagining it. I stared at a crack in the counter, wishing time would move faster. I wanted Rick to come back. I wanted my mom. I wanted to be anywhere but there. The bell above the diner door chimed. 2 men walked in. They weren't there to eat. They scanned the room like they were checking inventory. When their eyes landed on me, they didn't look away. One of them smirked. My heart started pounding so hard it felt like it was pushing against my ribs. I looked toward the window, searching for Rick. He wasn't there. His truck was still parked outside, but he was gone. The 2 men started walking toward me, slow and certain, like they had all the time in the world. I stood up without meaning to, my legs moving before my brain caught up. I backed up a step, then another, feeling like prey. Just when one of them reached the counter, someone brushed past behind me. A large hand landed firmly on my shoulder. Warm, solid, unshakable. I froze. The smell of leather and road dust hit me before his voice did. A deep whisper, low enough that only I could hear. "You're in danger. Pretend I'm your dad." My blood turned to ice. It was the Hell's Angel. He stepped slightly in front of me, blocking me from the two men with the simplest shift of his body, like it was nothing, like he'd done it 1,000 times before. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. But something in me said trust him. Maybe it was the calm in his voice. Maybe it was the way he didn't grip me too hard, just enough to steady me. Maybe it was instinct. I don't know. But my body obeyed before my mind decided. I moved closer to him. The taller of the two men raised an eyebrow. "This your kid?" he asked, sounding amused like he already knew the answer. The biker didn't blink. "Yeah," he said. "He's mine." His voice was steady, even, but sharp enough to cut through steel. The man laughed. "Funny. Last time I checked, you didn't have—" The biker took one slow step forward. "Walk away," he said quietly. "Last time you checked was too long ago." The entire diner felt silent. Even the sizzling from the grill faded. The second man nudged the first. "Let's go. Not worth it." They backed up, hands raised slightly, eyes locked on the biker or maybe on what he represented. Trouble. Real trouble. The kind even criminals didn't want to touch. When they finally walked out the door, I exhaled for the first time in what felt like minutes. The biker didn't look at me right away. His eyes followed the men through the window, watching them cross the lot. "Only depois de alguns segundos il falou, ainda baixo, come with me." My voice cracked. "Who are you?" He didn't answer. He just guided me gently toward the exit, as if he'd done this 1,000 times, like saving strangers was something he did on weekends. When we stepped outside, I looked around desperately for Rick. He was still gone. The biker saw the panic on my face. "He left you," he said, "and those men weren't coming to talk." My chest tightened. Why would they want me? He turned to face me then, his expression heavy, serious, almost regretful. "Because your mom's boyfriend owes some very bad people," he said, "and he told them you were the payment." My knees nearly buckled. He steadied me with one hand. "You're not safe with him," he said, "but you're safe with me for now." I swallowed hard, staring into his eyes, searching for something. Truth, lies, anything. "What do you want from me?" I whispered. He hesitated, a long, heavy pause. Then quietly, "Nothing. I owe your father, and I pay my debts." My breath caught in my throat. "My father? You knew him?" He nodded once, slowly. "There's a lot you don't know," he said, "but we don't have time for that here." The cold wind blew harder then, lifting dust and paper across the empty lot. "Come on," he said. "They won't let this go. We need to move." And for the first time in my life, I walked willingly toward a man everyone else feared, because he was the only person who didn't look at me like a problem. He looked at me like someone worth saving. We crossed the parking lot together, his steps steady and unhurried, like nothing that had just happened inside the diner surprised him. I kept looking over my shoulder, half expecting those men to burst out of the door and come running after us. The night felt louder now. The hum of the highway, the flicker of the old sign, the crunch of gravel under our shoes. Everything sounded like a warning. He stopped beside a black Harley parked near the edge of the lot. It looked like it had seen a lot of miles, a lot of roads, a lot of stories no one ever wrote down. There were scratches on the chrome, worn leather on the seat, and a small sticker of the American flag peeling off near the gas tank. "You ever been on a bike?" he asked. I shook my head, still shivering from something that had nothing to do with the cold. "Helmet," he said, handing me one. "Put it on." I stared at him for a second. "Where are we going?" "Away from here," he said. "That's all you need to know for now." I almost argued. Almost said I should call my mom, that she'd be worried, that this was crazy. But then I remembered. She didn't even know I was gone. She trusted Rick. She trusted a man who had just tried to trade me like I was something you could hand over to clear a debt. My hands shook as I took the helmet from him. He noticed. "Hey," he said, steady, not unkind. "You scared?" I let out a shaky laugh. "You kidding? I'm terrified." "Good," he replied. "Means you're still paying attention." I put on the helmet and climbed onto the bike behind him, unsure where to put my hands. He solved that for me, grabbing my wrists and pulling them around his waist. "Hold on tight," he said, "and don't let go, no matter what." The engine roared to life under us, a deep vibration that rattled my chest and bones. It was loud and alive, like the heartbeat of something wild and dangerous. He pulled out of the lot and onto the road, merging smoothly into the thin flow of late-night traffic. As the station faded behind us, I felt the cold wind slam against my jacket. Lights blurred and streaked as we sped down the highway. Part of me wanted to close my eyes and pretend this was just some insane dream I'd wake up from in my own bed. The other part of me knew very well. This was real. Too real. We rode in silence for a while, the sound of the engine filling up every space where thoughts could grow. But thoughts don't care about engines. They find their way in anyway. What did he mean he owed my father? My father had been a ghost my whole life, a story that never got fully told. My mom didn't like to talk about him. When I asked, she would say, "He was a good man, but life wasn't fair," and that was it. Sometimes she added, "He loved you." But she always said it with this distant look, like she was speaking through a wall only she could see. Now this stranger, this outlaw, this Hell's Angel, was claiming he knew him, owed him, was risking his neck for me because of that. None of it made sense. After maybe 20 minutes, he exited the highway and followed a smaller road, then another, until we pulled into the gravel lot of a cheap roadside motel. The kind where the lights buzz and half the letters on the sign don't work. The kind where the paint is always peeling and the ice machine is always broken. He killed the engine, and the world went strangely quiet, like someone had turned down the volume on reality. "Come on," he said, swinging his leg off the bike. I slid off slowly, my legs unsteady, helmet still on like armor I wasn't ready to remove. He reached over and unbuckled it for me. "You're safe here," he said. "For tonight, at least." "How do I know that?" I asked. He gave me a look, half amused, half tired. "Kid, if I wanted to hurt you, I wouldn't have done it in front of witnesses at a diner, and I sure as hell wouldn't have scared off the guys who were actually planning on hurting you." He had a point, an uncomfortable one. We went into the small lobby. The clerk barely looked up from his phone. Cash changed hands. A room key slid across the counter. No names asked. He led me to a room on the second floor. The door creaked when he opened it, and the smell of stale cigarettes hit me immediately. There were 2 beds with mismatched comforters, a flickering lamp, and a TV bolted to the wall. He locked the door behind us, checked the window, then finally sat on the bed closest to the door. I just stood there, unsure of what to do with my hands, my feet, my entire life. "Sit," he said, pointing at the other bed. I sat. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. Up close, he looked older than I first thought, maybe in his late 40s. There were deep lines around his eyes, the kind carved by years of squinting against sun and regret. His beard had more gray than black. His knuckles were scarred, but his eyes were surprisingly clear. Not glassy like a drunk, not wild like someone high. Just clear. Sharp. "What's your name?" he asked. "You mean my real one," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "Or the one you used back there?" "The one your father gave you," he replied. I swallowed. "It's Noah." He nodded slowly, like the name confirmed something. "I figured," he said. My heart skipped. "What do you mean, you figured?" He leaned back against the headboard, exhaled, then finally said, Your dad talked about you. Back when you were just a baby. He'd keep a picture of you tucked inside his wallet. Got all defensive when anyone tried to look at it. I stared at him. You're lying. He shook his head. I wish I was. I clenched my hands into fists, anger bubbling up. If you knew him, if you knew he had a kid, where the hell were you all these years? He didn't react to the anger. He let it hit him like a wave that couldn't knock him down anymore. In prison, he said simply, for most of them. The words dropped between us like something heavy. He rubbed his face with one hand. I'm not going to pretend I'm some hero. I've done a lot of things I'm not proud of. Hurt people I shouldn't have. Walked paths I should have turned away from. Your dad? He was one of the only decent men I ever met back then, and the only one who treated me like I wasn't already too far gone. I felt something crack inside me at the mention of my dad like that. Not as a myth, not as a ghost, but as a person who once laughed, talked, carried a photo of me in his wallet. How did you meet him? I asked quietly. He stared at a spot on the wall, like he was watching a memory replay. We were both working at a construction site, he said. I was there half for the paycheck, half because my parole officer was on my back. Your dad was there because that's who he was. Work, provide, keep his head down. I was trouble. He knew it, but he never treated me like I was dirt. He paused, his jaw tightening a little. There was an accident, he continued. A scaffold gave way. I should have fallen. Should have broken my neck or worse. Your dad grabbed me, pulled me back, saved my life. Broke his own wrist in the process. My chest constricted. He never told us about that. Yeah, well, real heroes don't brag, the biker muttered. I swallowed hard. What's your name? He looked back at me. People call me Stone. That your real name? He shook his head once. It's the one that fits. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. So you're doing all this because you feel guilty? Because you think you owe him? He shrugged slightly. Call it debt. Call it karma. Call it cause and effect. I believe what you put out, you get back. He pulled me out of a fall I couldn't come back from. Then he died before I could ever do anything for him. And I watched my life slide back into the same mud he tried to pull me out of. His eyes darkened a little. When I got out again, years later, I heard he was gone. Heard he had a kid. Heard the kid was in Spokane with the mom. That was you. But I was a mess. I told myself you'd be better off not knowing a guy like me existed. Better no father than a bad one. So I stayed away. So why now? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. Because, he said, and his gaze sharpened. A couple of months ago, I started hearing a name I recognized in conversations I shouldn't be hearing. Your mom's boyfriend, Rick. I heard he was in deep with people I know, people who don't hesitate to use whoever's standing next to them as collateral. My stomach twisted. And then tonight, he continued, I got a call from someone I used to run with. He said some idiot was bringing a teenage kid as part of a deal to square things. Stone's jaw clenched. He said your name. My blood ran cold. So I went to that diner. Stone said quietly. I didn't know if I was too late. I just knew if I didn't at least try, I'd be letting your father fall for me twice. I stared at him, lungs burning from the effort of breathing through so much information at once. So that's it? I said. You swoop in, scare off a couple of guys, throw me on your bike, and what, everything's fine now? You think they're just gonna let this go? He met my eyes. No, they won't. Which is why we're not done. Fear crawled up my spine. What do you mean we? I asked. You're in this whether you like it or not, he said. The moment your mom let that man into your life, the board was set. But here's the thing, kid. You still get to choose the next move. I frowned. What choice do I have? I'm a minor. I have school. A life. Do you? He cut in, not cruelly, but directly. You had a life where you thought you were safe in your own home, while the man sleeping there was negotiating your worth like a bargaining chip. That's not a life, Noah, that's a trap. I felt anger flare again. So what, I just never go home? I disappear? Leave my mom with him? She'll be the one in danger then. For the first time since we'd met, I saw something soften in Stone's expression, almost like pride. There it is, he said. The part of you that still cares about the people who hurt you. That's what made your dad different. He could see people were broken and still want to protect them. Tears burned the corners of my eyes, but I blinked them back, refusing to cry in front of this stranger, no matter how much my chest ached. So what do we do? I asked. Stone leaned forward, resting his forearms on his thighs, eyes locked on mine. We stop pretending this is just going to solve itself, he said. We stop pretending that closing your eyes makes the monster go away. You want to protect your mom? You want to stop being the kid everyone pushes around like a pawn? Then you help me end this the right way. The right way? I echoed, wary. You're a Hell's Angel. I'm guessing your definition of right is a little different from mine. He gave a small, humorless chuckle. Fair. But I'm not talking about street justice. That stuff always comes back around. I'm talking about something cleaner, legal, with enough proof that no one can twist it. I stared at him, confused. What are you planning? He leaned back again, eyes studying me like he was measuring if I could carry the weight of his next words. I still know people, he said, on both sides of the line. Some of them wear leather, some of them wear badges. Not all cops are clean. Not all bikers are dirty. But I know a couple of officers who owe me favors. I make a call and they'll listen. They'll listen to you? I questioned. You just said you were in prison. And I helped them shut down something bigger when I was on the inside, he replied. Information travels. Debts stack up. Like I said, cause and effect. That phrase stuck in my head. Cause and effect. My life suddenly felt like a long chain of other people's causes crashing down on me as effects I never asked for. You want to bring them in? I asked. The cops? Not for a sob story, he said. For evidence. For a setup that catches your mom's boyfriend and the guys he owes red-handed. Drugs. Weapons. Whatever they're planning to move, including you. Once they have that, they can protect you and make sure he doesn't crawl back into your lives. I swallowed. And what do you need me to do? He held my gaze, and I could tell he wasn't going to sugarcoat it. I need you to call him, Stone said. I need you to tell him you got scared. You ran, but now you regret it. That you're ready to do what he asked. I need you to convince him you're still his way out. The room suddenly felt too small, like the walls were shrinking. You want me to lie to him, I said slowly. To walk right back toward the people who wanted to use me. Yes, Stone said, with a wire, with backup, with a different ending this time. My pulse hammered in my ears. What if he doesn't believe me? I asked. Then we try something else, Stone replied. But knowing guys like him, he'll be desperate enough to grab any chance he gets, especially if he thinks you still trust him. I don't trust him, I said through clenched teeth. Stone nodded. I know, but he doesn't have to know that. It felt wrong. It felt dangerous. It felt like balancing on the edge of a cliff with no safety net. But at the same time, something inside me, something quiet and stubborn, recognized a painful truth. Doing nothing was also a choice. And that choice had consequences too. I don't want to be used anymore, I said under my breath. Stone heard me. Good, he said softly, because this ends only when you stop letting other people move you like a piece on their board. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an old, worn wallet. The leather was cracked, edges fraying. He opened it and pulled out something folded and faded. He held it out to me. I hesitated, then took it. It was a photo. The colors were washed out, but I could still make out the face of a younger man holding a baby. He had tired eyes, a small, honest smile. His hair was darker than mine, but the shape of his nose, his jaw, his eyebrows, those were mine. My throat tightened so much it hurt. "That's the last picture he showed me of you," Stone said. Said he was going to frame it when he got home. Said he was going to make sure you never had to grow up around men like me. Tears blurred the edges of the picture. "And yet," I whispered. "And yet here we are." Stone finished for me. World's funny like that. Sometimes the very thing someone tried to protect you from ends up being the thing that shows up when you need it most. I stared at the photo for a long time before carefully placing it on the nightstand, like a fragile piece of evidence that my life hadn't always been this twisted. "Okay," I said finally, my voice shaking but steady enough. "I'll call him." Stone nodded slowly like he'd been waiting for that. "But after," I added, "after this is over, what happens to you?" He gave a half smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Don't worry about me, kid," he said. "Men like me always pay our tab. One way or another. And what if they come after you for helping me?" He shrugged. "Then I'll deal with it. I've been running from my past for a long time. Maybe it's time I stop running and just face whatever's left." There was something in his tone that scared me more than anything he'd said before. Not for me, for him. "If you're going to keep doing crazy stuff like this," I muttered, "you should at least try not to die." For the first time, he actually laughed. A real laugh. Rough, but real. "No promises, Noah," he said. "But I'll try." He handed me an old burner phone from his bag. "When you're ready," he said, "we make the call." I stared at the phone. My hand felt heavy. My whole life I'd been reacting. Tonight, for the first time, I was about to act. And deep inside, beneath all the fear, something in me shifted, like a gear finally catching, like a door finally opening. Maybe this was what my dad had tried to teach Stone once. Maybe this was what he'd wanted for me, too. Not a perfect life. Just the courage to stop being a passenger in my own story. I sat there for a long time, staring at the burner phone like it was some kind of explosive device. Maybe it was. One wrong move, and everything could blow up in my face. I could already feel the weight of what I was about to do pressing down on my shoulders, heavier than anything I'd carried before. I wasn't used to making decisions that mattered. I wasn't used to having any control at all. But Stone was right about one thing. Doing nothing would only guarantee that everything stayed exactly the same. And the same was dangerous. Stone stood up, grabbed a chair, turned it around, and sat facing me. His arms rested on the backrest, his expression steady, patient. It was unnerving how calm he was while my entire world felt like it was spinning off its axis. "When you call him," Stone said, "you stick to the plan. You're scared, you're sorry, and you're willing to fix his mess, that's all." I swallowed hard. What if he doesn't buy it? "He will," Stone said confidently. "Guys like Rick always think they're smarter than they are. He'll see what he wants to see. His way out." I nodded, though my hands wouldn't stop shaking. "What if he wants proof I'm alone?" I asked. Stone lifted an eyebrow. "Then you tell him what you always do. Your mom's asleep? You slipped out? You didn't tell anyone. That's what he expects from you, isn't it?" I hated how true that was. "And what if he shows up with those guys from the diner?" "He will," Stone said calmly. "That's the point." My heart hammered against my ribs. "But they wanted to—" "I know what they wanted," he cut in. "But this time they won't touch you. They won't even get close." The way he said it, with such certainty, made something inside me steady. Just a little. Not enough to erase the fear, but enough to hold it still. Stone handed me the phone. I turned it over in my hands, looking at my reflection in the cracked screen. I didn't look brave. I looked like a scared kid pretending to be strong. "Take a deep breath," Stone said. I did. It didn't help. Still, I dialed Rick's number. Each ring felt like a countdown. 1 ring, 2, 3. Then he picked up. "Noah?" His voice sounded sharp, angry, but also anxious. "Where the hell are you? Do you have any idea what you've done?" I closed my eyes. "I'm sorry," I said, forcing my voice to tremble. "I freaked out. I wasn't thinking." "What happened back there?" he snapped. "You ran. You embarrassed me. Those guys think I can't control my own household now." The words hit me the way he wanted them to, like a punch. He always talked like that, twisting things until I was the one at fault. "I know," I whispered. "I know. I screwed up. I got scared. But I'll do it. I'll do whatever you said. I need another chance." There was silence on the line, a long one. Then Rick exhaled heavily. "Yeah," he said, voice suddenly softer, almost warm. "Yeah, okay. I get it. You're young. You panic. But you're doing the right thing calling me back." Stone watched me closely, nodding slightly, signaling me to continue. "Just tell me what to do," I said. "You remember the place I told you about?" Rick asked. "The truck yard off Highway 395, behind the old grain silos?" My stomach twisted. I remembered. "A place with no lights, no cameras, no neighbors." "Yeah," I whispered. "I remember." "Good," he said. "Be there in an hour. Come alone. If you do this, everything's gonna be fine. You're gonna help fix things, make us all safe. You understand?" The way he said, "make us safe," like I owed him something, made something inside me crack. But I forced myself to stay on script. "I'll be there," I said. "Attaboy," he replied. "And Noah, don't try anything stupid. You don't want those guys thinking you're unreliable. They're not the forgiving type." I hung up without answering. My hands were sweating so badly the phone nearly slipped from my grip. Stone stood and took the phone from me gently. "You did good," he said. I let out a shaky breath. "He sounds normal. Like this is nothing." Stone's jaw tightened. People like Rick are good at pretending they're in control. That's why they get away with so much for so long. I rubbed my face with both hands. "What now?" "Now," Stone said. "We call the cops." For a second, I thought he was joking, but he reached for another phone in his bag, a different one, an old flip phone, and dialed a number from memory. "Officer Ramirez," he said when the call connected. "I need a favor." I couldn't hear what the person on the other end said, but Stone's tone changed. It wasn't the deep, intimidating voice he used with the men at the diner. It wasn't the calm, grounded tone he used with me. It was something else, something familiar, respectful, professional. "I have a minor in danger," he told the officer. "Drug exchange, human trafficking potential. I have evidence and names. I need a team at the truck yard behind the 395 silos. Unmarked vehicles. Tonight." My heart jumped at the words human trafficking. Hearing them out loud made everything too real, too sharp. I listened as Stone gave details, names, descriptions, places. Some of the names I didn't know. Some I recognized from whispered conversations Rick had in the kitchen or from men coming and going from our house when my mom was at work. Stone ended the call and slid the phone back into his bag. "They'll be there," he said. "Quiet, hidden, watching." I swallowed. "Are you sure we can trust them?" "No," Stone said honestly. "But we can trust that they hate being embarrassed. And a bus like this? This is the kind of thing they can't ignore." He stood and grabbed his jacket. "We leave in 15 minutes. I nodded, though my stomach was in knots. While he checked his gear, I stared at the photo of my dad on the nightstand. I didn't remember that moment. I didn't remember being in his arms. But looking at it, I felt something shift inside me. A tug, a thread, some quiet, painful pride. He saved me once, I whispered to myself. And now his friend is saving me again. A soft knock on the doorframe startled me. Stone wasn't knocking. He was checking the lock. "You ready?" he asked. "No," I admitted. "But I'll go anyway." He nodded. "Good. Courage isn't supposed to feel good. It's supposed to feel necessary." We left the motel room, the cold air biting harder than before. When we got to the bike, he handed me the helmet again. "Tonight," Stone said quietly, "you don't flinch. You don't hesitate. You show up, you follow the plan, and you let me do the rest. Understand?" I nodded. "And Noah?" I looked up. "You don't look at the ground tonight. You don't look weak. That man's fed off your fear long enough, not tonight." Something burned in my chest. Fear, anger, resolve, all tangled. "I'll try," I said. "No," Stone corrected. "You'll do it." We rode out into the night, the bike roaring underneath us like a beast determined to see this through. The wind whipped past us, sharp and cold, but I held on tighter, not out of fear this time, but because the road ahead demanded it. When we reached the truck yard, the place was exactly as I remembered, dark, abandoned, vast. The only light came from the pale sliver of moon and a few flickering security lamps on rusted poles. Rows of old trailers sat like sleeping giants, hulking shapes in the shadows. Stone parked the bike in the dark behind a line of empty containers. "You go first," he said. "He needs to see you alone." My throat tightened. "And you?" Stone scanned the yard. "I'll be everywhere." Despite the fear clawing at me, I nodded and stepped out into the open. Each step felt heavier, my boots crunching on gravel like distant thunder. Then I heard a car approaching. Headlights flashed, then turned off. A door slammed. Another. Voices. Rick's voice. "This way," he said. He said he'd meet us here. The shadows shifted as silhouettes emerged. 3, maybe 4 men. The same ones from the diner, plus another I didn't recognize. I forced myself to stand straight. Not frozen. Not trembling, just still. Rick stepped into the faint light first. "There you are," he said, smiling like we were at a family reunion instead of a crime scene. "You had me worried, kid." I felt my jaw clench. "You said to come alone," I said. He shrugged. "These guys need to trust you too. You don't mind, do you?" Behind him, one of the men grinned, the same grin that had made my skin crawl at the diner. "Kid's braver than he looks," the man said. I didn't respond. I didn't look at the ground. Rick glanced around. "Where's the stuff?" One of the men nudged him. "Maybe he hid it, or maybe he ran again." Rick's eyes hardened. "Noah wouldn't do that, right?" I swallowed slowly. "I'm here. That's what matters." Rick stepped closer, lowering his voice. "And what about the guy from the diner?" he asked. "That biker. You didn't talk to him, did you?" My heartbeat thudded in my ears. Think, Noah. Slow. Calm. Like Stone said. "I ran," I said. "I don't even know who he was." Rick studied my face, searching for cracks. Before he could say anything else, the man on his right grabbed my arm. "Let's check him," he said. Panic shot up my spine. They would find the wire. They would... A voice sliced through the night. "Get your hands off him." The men spun around. Stone stepped out from behind a trailer, his silhouette sharp and unyielding under the dim moonlight. The moment stretched tight, ready to snap. Rick's face twisted into something ugly. Fear mixed with rage. "You again?" he spat. "Why the hell won't you mind your own business?" Stone moved forward, each step deliberate. "Because," he said, "this is my business." Rick laughed. You think you can take all of us? Stone stopped, his eyes cold. Don't need to. Suddenly there was a sound, a soft click. Then another. Shapes moved in the shadows on all sides. Voices murmured. Lights flashed. Badges glinted. Police. Unmarked cars. Dozens of them. Rick's eyes widened as officers emerged from behind trailers, from between trucks, from the dark edges of the yard. Guns drawn, voices shouting commands. Hands in the air! Down on the ground! Do not move! Chaos erupted in every direction. But through all of it, Stone never looked away from Rick. Rick pointed at me, his voice cracking as officers restrained him. You set me up, you little... He didn't get to finish. An officer shoved him face down onto the gravel. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I didn't look away. Stone was right. Not tonight. For a moment, the entire truck yard felt frozen in a kind of suspended reality. Sirens fading, metal groaning under the weight of officers climbing over trailers, radios crackling with clipped orders. The lights from the unmarked cars cast long, sharp shadows across the gravel. Rick was pinned to the ground, face twisted in anger and disbelief, shouting curses that barely rose above the chaos. I stood there unmoving, cold wind slicing against my face, the gravel beneath my shoes trembling from the adrenaline flooding my system. It felt like the moment right after a lightning strike, bright, blinding, unreal. A hand touched my shoulder gently. Stone. You did good, he said quietly. I turned to him, my chest tight, every emotion tangled and messy inside me. Relief, fear, rage, confusion, gratitude, all of it boiled up until it felt like my ribs were barely holding it in place. He was going to let them... I couldn't even finish the sentence, my throat locked. He really was going to let them take me. Stone's expression didn't soften, but something in his eyes shifted, something like sorrow for a truth he already knew. People like him, Stone said, think they're owed a way out. They'll sell anyone to buy themselves another day. I looked over at Rick, still spitting anger as officers hauled him up. His eyes landed on me with a hatred so sharp it sliced through the cold. This is your fault, Rick screamed. You did this. You think she won't pay for this? You think they won't come for her? You think... A nearby officer cut him off, shoving him into the back of a police SUV and slamming the door so hard the whole vehicle rocked. The sudden silence felt louder than his screaming. My stomach knotted. My mom, she's still with him. She doesn't know anything about this. She's safe, Stone said. I had Ramirez send a patrol car to the house as soon as we made the call. I blinked. You didn't tell me that. You had enough to worry about, he replied. Besides, if I told you, you might have panicked over the wrong thing. He wasn't wrong. I glanced around. Officers were collecting evidence, taking statements from undercover units, coordinating arrests for the men Rick had brought. One of the officers, Ramirez, I assumed, walked toward us. He was tall, built like he spent most of his free time at the gym and carried himself like a man used to being in control. But when he looked at Stone, something shifted in his posture. Respect. Maybe grudging respect, but respect nonetheless. Stone, the officer said. Never thought I'd see you do something like this again. Stone shrugged. Old habits die hard. Yeah, Ramirez replied, crossing his arms. And so do old debts. His eyes flicked to me. You okay, kid? I nodded stiffly. I think so. He gave me a small professional nod, then turned back to Stone. You know how this goes, Ramirez said. You need to come with us. You were present at a criminal exchange site, potentially armed, and cooperative or not. Your record means I can't just let you walk. My chest clenched. Wait, so he's getting arrested? Stone didn't look surprised. He didn't look scared either. If anything, he looked like he'd expected this from the start. "It's fine, Noah," he said. I knew this was part of the deal. "But you saved me," I said, voice rising. "You're the reason any of this worked. You're the reason—" Stone held up a hand. "It's okay." "It's not okay," I snapped, louder than I intended. Officers nearby glanced over. "You don't deserve to go back to prison for helping me." Stone looked down at me then, really looked, with an expression I had trouble reading. Tired, proud, resigned. All of it mixed into something deeply human. "Noah," he said softly, "every choice we make leads somewhere. Every road has a cost. When I stepped in for you tonight, I wasn't trying to outrun mine. I was accepting it." I shook my head. But nothing," he said. "I told you earlier, real dads protect even when it costs them." The words hit me so hard I felt myself sway. He turned to Ramirez. "Let's get this over with." Ramirez nodded. "I'll make sure it goes smoothly." Before they could take him, I grabbed Stone's jacket sleeve. "Will I see you again?" I asked. Stone met my eyes. "You better," he said, "or everything we did tonight is pointless." "But what do I do now?" I asked, voice cracking. He placed a hand on my shoulder, firm and grounding. "You live," he said. "You go home. You take care of your mom. And you don't let anyone decide who you are ever again." I swallowed hard. "I don't know if I can." "You can," he said. "And if you start to forget that, remember tonight. Remember you didn't run. Remember you stood there and faced him." He squeezed my shoulder one last time. "And remember you're your father's son. That man didn't raise cowards." I blinked back tears as Ramirez signaled for Stone to step forward. Another officer approached with handcuffs. Stone didn't flinch. He didn't resist. He didn't even look back at Rick's SUV or the men being loaded into other cars. He just held my gaze until the officer gently turned him around and clasped the cuffs over his wrists. For a moment the world felt unbearably quiet. Then Stone said one last thing, his voice low but clear enough for me to hear. "Make your life count, Noah. That's how you pay me back." And then they walked him away. I don't remember getting home. Not the ride, not the questions the officers asked, not even the moment my mother ran out of the house sobbing when she saw me step out of the patrol car. Everything blurred together, like my brain had switched to autopilot. The first clear memory I have after that night is sitting on my bed hours later, still fully dressed, staring at the photo Stone had given me. The one of my father holding me as a baby. I traced the outline of his arm around me, wondering what he would have said if he were alive that night. Would he have been proud? Would he have been scared? Would he have believed I could be brave? Maybe all of the above. Over the next weeks, things changed fast. Rick stayed in jail, facing multiple charges. My mom started going to meetings again, the kind where people sit in a circle and talk about rebuilding their lives one step at a time. She apologized so many times I lost count. Sometimes I wanted to forgive her. Sometimes I couldn't. Healing isn't linear. They never tell you how messy it is. I got counseling, learned how to talk about things instead of burying them until they exploded. I stopped hanging around kids who got into trouble just because they were bored. I got a job shelving books at the library. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt safe. Real. Honest. I wrote a letter to Stone the month after he was taken in. I didn't know if he'd ever get it, or if he'd even want to read it if he did. But I wrote it anyway. I told him everything, that I was trying, that I wasn't running from my life anymore, that I hoped he could get out someday and see the world from a different angle, that I hoped I'd get the chance to thank him in person again. He never wrote back. But a few months later, a package arrived in the mail. Inside was a simple chain with a small silver pendant. On the back were 3 words, engraved in blocky handwriting. Stand your ground. No note. No explanation. I didn't need one. I wore that chain every day after that. Not because it made me brave, but because it reminded me that someone believed I could be. Years passed. Things got better. Not instantly, not magically, just steadily, like a slow sunrise over a cold landscape. And every once in a while, when the world gets loud, when fear creeps up my spine, when I'm not sure which direction to take, I hear Stone's voice in my head. You choose the next move. Courage feels necessary, not comfortable. You're your father's son. Those words changed me. That night changed me. And if you're watching this, maybe it's because you needed to hear something too. Maybe you're facing someone or something that feels too big, too dangerous, too impossible. Maybe you feel small, helpless, afraid to make the wrong choice. If you take anything from my story, let it be this. You're not powerless. You're not stuck. Fear doesn't get to decide who you become. You do. If you've ever had someone protect you when you didn't expect it, or if you've ever misjudged someone based on how they looked, or if you've ever had to face a truth that scared you, tell me in the comments. I want to know your story too. And if my story meant something to you, even a little, hit like so it reaches someone who needs it. Subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter, because sometimes all it takes is one story to change the direction of a life. Thanks for listening.